We'll start with Sif Nun Aleph. Ba'achshav nitpashet haminhag. So nowadays the minhag is as follows: Shemi shenevad lo shtar chov kazeh. That nowadays, if a person loses a promissory note, the hechatum bo modeh shechayav lo, right? The person who signed the promissory note admits, yes, I borrowed the money from you. Ach she'eino rotzeh l'shalem, but he doesn't want to pay without getting the promissory note in return. Shema yimtze'enu acher v'yotziu azai v'yotzi'o. So he says, but if it's just an IOU that says I owe the bearer of this note $100,000 and it doesn't specifically say which party, right? So then here's the difficulty. What if somebody else will produce that promissory note? Let's say that the creditor loses the note, and all it says is like a check, right? What we would call a check today, but it's a blank check. It's made out to cash, and a guy says, "Oh, you want me to give you another check made out to cash?" I can't do that, because what if you say you lost it? It fell out of your pocket, so someone else is going to take that check and is going to cash it, right? So I don't want to be out of pocket twice. So azayachrizu bebeis hakneses sheshtar chov shesikumo kach v'kach uzmano kach v'kach. So he says the practice in the 18th century was as follows: they would make a klap on the bima in the shul, and they would make a public announcement. There is a promissory note that was signed by Shimon, saying that he owes the bearer of the note $100,000, and it is dated as with the following date: Ve'hachatum ploni ben ploni, ve'edei hakiyum ploni ben ploni uploni ben ploni, and the signatory, the person who signed the note, is Shimon ben Yaakov, and the witnesses are Ploni and Ploni. In other words, we identify the shtar as accurately and as specifically as we possibly can. So mi sheyesh lo shtar chov kazeh yavo lebeis din miyad. So anyone who has such a note in his possession is called upon to come to the beis din immediately. V'im lo yavo yivatlu habeis din hashtar chov. And if he doesn't come within the next 5 days, let's say, or whatever number of days they say, they will annul that note. In other words, they will declare that note to be invalid in court. V'yitnu katuv v'chatum lahachatum bo. And they will give a writ to that effect to the person who signed on that promissory note. So basically, is there such an instrument in secular law? Basically saying, if anyone has a financial instrument and has not used it to collect, they have until such and such a date to utilize that note or utilize that financial instrument, because we want to make sure that it's not going to be abused. And if you don't act upon it within a certain amount of time, the courts will annul the efficacy of that note. Yes, yeah, it's almost like a bank canceling a check.
So it's not something similar that they used to announce in the newspaper. That's something.
Yeah, I guess it's like making a public announcement that if you have a certain, I mean, there's always things like that. A class action suit, for example, if you have rights of a claim against the company for a class action suit. So they come to a settlement, and then they send out every person who may have purchased an appliance from that company, and they make a public announcement. You may be entitled to a rebate or compensation based on the settlement, but you have to make your claim by such and such a date. And if you don't, then it becomes null and void. Really? Wow. Lots of luck. Yeah. Okay. Vimlo yava, okay. Va'od na'agu, another minhag that they have is she'en adam rashai liknos shtar chov kazeh ad sheyishal behachatum bo imhu parua. Another minhag that was instituted is that anytime there's an open promissory note that basically does not name the creditor, but it basically says the bearer of this note is entitled to collect X amount of dollars from Shimon. So if someone is selling that kind of note, like let's say, for example, I have a check made out to cash and it's signed by Marvin, right? And I go to somebody else and I say, Marvin gave me this, it's as good as cash. I'll sell it to you for 90 cents on the dollar. So that, because I just don't want to, I don't want it the tirch of going to Marvin's bank and cashing the check. But if you want to take it, I know Marvin's good for the money. So the minhag became that instead of just going ahead and purchasing that note, the minhag that was instituted is that a person should never purchase such a check or such a note until he checks with the debtor, until he checks with Marvin. And say, Marvin, someone is walking around trying to sell a check made out to cash from you. Is this check still good? Imhu parua, because maybe it's been paid already. Now, you can imagine that, especially in today's world. By the way, I don't think you can do an electronic deposit of a check that's made out to cash. I'm not sure, but it would seem to me that, yeah, because I almost all my checks now, I electronically deposit. We've become so lazy. I just take a picture of it and put it in the bank. So it's especially relevant, I guess, today. Vim ein hachasim ba'ir rashai liknoso ve'eno choshesh l'shovar. He says, if, however, the debtor is not available in the city, even though the minhag is to first consult with the debtor before you purchase such a note, but if he's not in the city, you can purchase it with confidence, and you don't have to worry about the fact that maybe it was paid and the person bearing the note, instead of returning the note to the debtor, gave him a receipt. And now he's trying to pass it off as an unpaid note when it's already been paid. And the reason why you don't have to worry about that is kishovar v'chasimas yad eno moel uve'edim kol yeshlo. He says, because when there's a promissory note that has the signatures of witnesses, the note still will have the power of collectability, because anytime there's witnesses on a note, there's it'll make a noise. Now, what does he mean by that? So if we take a look at the Imrei Yaakov, he states as follows: he says, we learned this previously in the previous sif, that when the name of the creditor is not listed on the promissory note, then you can't just, if I have a promissory note that does not have the name of the creditor, it simply says the bearer of this note can collect X number of dollars from Shimon, you can't hold on to the note. No person is going to, no debtor has a right to let the creditor hold on to that note. The only way that the debtor can pay on that note is if he takes the note and tears it up afterwards. And that's what we learned in the previous sif. And like he says, Ein shovar b'chasimas yad hamal v'moil olav im yotzi enu acher. He says, any kind of receipt that the debtor has will not help. V'yomar kanise mehamal v'velo yadatu shenifra. He says, because the creditor can always, the person who purchased the note can always say, I didn't know that this was paid. So you're never allowed to do such a situation, to allow a note that doesn't have the name of the creditor on it to be paid back and allow the creditor to hold on to that note. Can't do that, because he could always sell the note and no one will know that it was paid back. So so even if the debtor is tricked into taking a receipt Basically the creditor says, here's the note, pay me the 10,000 or whatever it is, or the $1,000 that you owe me, and I'll write you a receipt that you paid in full instead of my returning the note to you. Halachically, you're not allowed to do that. Not only you as a debtor are not allowed to pay the note, but the creditor is not allowed to set up that mechanism because it's only looking for trouble. Because if it's an open-ended note without the name of the creditor on it, then no one's going to know that this debt has been paid back. So when the name of the creditor is on the note, where it basically says Shimon owes Ruvain $1,000, so then if for whatever reason Ruvain doesn't have the note on him and Shimon is ready to pay him back, it's okay for Ruvain to say, I don't have the note with me, but I'm going to write you a receipt. Then it's acceptable for what's called a shovar to be written, and Reuben can give it over to Shimon. But in that kind of situation, anyone who's going to purchase the note would have to have some consultation either with the debtor or the witnesses to make sure that the note hasn't been paid back already, right? And that's what we learned in the previous SIF. Maybe we should just really review that. We should really review what was in the previous SIF. We'll do that in Mirz Hashem tomorrow because we have to stop in a moment for Rosh Chodesh. So, and by the way, Rosh Chodesh is also tomorrow. So we're going to have 2 short shiurim. Then we'll learn on Thursday and then on Friday. And Mirz Hashem will learn next Monday as well. Then I got to leave again. I'm leaving again for a few days next week. And I feel terrible because I normally don't travel so much. But hopefully that's the end of my travels. I know February has not been a good month for our being able to have the shiur. But Imrei Hashem will continue tomorrow, and we'll start again with Sif Nun just to review these halachas. It's up to you. We've always been doing 6:10, but if we'd have to put it in the WhatsApp if we wanted to do it. If we wanted to start at 6, I leave it up to the chevra to decide. Okay. All right. Have a good day. Chodesh Tov.